I just want to say a quick thank you to all you in the Graceologie community who have rated the show on iTunes or who have written a short review. It makes such a difference. And thanks to all of you who have shared on social media using the Graceologie hashtag. You guys are so awesome. It means so much, and it honestly helps so much. So if you happen to be listening and you've not yet done any of this, I would really appreciate it. Would you click your podcast app or go visit iTunes and give us a 5-star rating or just a quick 1-sentence review? Truly, truly, from my heart, it would mean so much. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Graceologie with Gwen Smith podcast. I'm Gwen Smith, and I am so glad you've joined me today. Around here, we have fun, faith-focused, grace-filled conversations, all to help you know and trust God more. Our discussions are honest, often humorous, and always practical, and they're going to encourage you in meaningful ways to live out and lean on the grace of Jesus in the midst of cluttered, messy days. You got any of those? I know I do. And I can't wait to get to today's conversation, which is all about reclaiming your energy in order to live life to the full. Today, my guest is Jen Wise. Jen received her master's in theology from Gordon Conwell, and she's the author of a new book called The Bright Life, but she's street level, just like you and me. In our conversation, we talk about the exhaustion of giving your all and feeling like it's never enough. So many of us women struggle with feeling this way. Are you one of them? Me too, girl, let me tell you. Well, Jen and I talk about how God created us to be healthy and strong and vibrant and to rest in those unforced rhythms of grace that Jesus so lovingly gives us. In The Bright Life and in this conversation, Jen challenges all of us to use small steps that lead us to a bright new beginning with habits that bring wholeness and truth to our lives. So if you feel like you're giving everything you have and constantly feel depleted, then this conversation will show you some practical and powerful ways that God can transform your daily walk through grace. Today's episode of the Graceologie with Gwen Smith podcast is sponsored by my absolute favorite seasonal subscription box, FabFitFun. Receive 20% off your first box when you go to fabfitfun.com and use the code Graceologie. Have you tried it yet? If you don't already know about FabFitFun, it's a seasonal box with high-quality, full-sized beauty, fitness, and lifestyle products. I love it so much. It retails for $49.99, but always has a value of over $200. And getting your FabFitFun box in the mail actually feels like it's your birthday, like 4 times a year. I love it. So head over to fabfitfun.com and use coupon code Graceologie for 20% off your first box. I'm telling you, you're going to love it. Well, hey, Jen Wise, welcome to the Graceologie podcast. I'm so glad to have you on today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
Well, I've already told my Graceologie community a little bit about you and about our conversation, but what I want to do now is get to know you in a more fun, girlfriendy kind of way. So one thing we do here is have a fast, fun favorites round. Are you ready, Jen?
I hope I'm ready. I think I'm ready.
It's going to be okay. Okay, we'll start off real simple. Okay. Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
America's Got Talent or The Voice?
Ooh, neither.
Air dry?
Am I allowed to say that?
Yes, you're allowed to say that, of course. Air dry or hair dryer?
I air dry for about 20 minutes and then I hair dry.
Oh, very specific. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
How many children do you have?
2 children.
Flip-flops or sneakers?
Sneakers.
Salmon or crab legs?
Salmon.
Ooh, on a scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at karaoke?
Ooh, 2. But with a lot of passion.
Well, that makes it even better. I think you should up it. Who is your favorite Charlie Brown character?
Linus.
That's funny. Okay, fill in the blank. Justin Bieber is...
I was going to say cute, but then I felt like I sound really old. I kind of think he's adorable, but then I do sound like I'm a million, but I think he's pretty adorable.
That's an answer. That's perfect. Phantom of the Opera or Les Miserables?
Phantom.
Breakfast or no breakfast?
Breakfast, always.
Favorite song from high school?
I have no idea. I'm so sorry. My brain is like, can't think of like a single song from high school. What is happening?
How do you not have like a high school theme song? I'm so old. Mine's like the B-52's Love Shack. I don't know.
Anything Jimmy Eat World, I think.
Okay. Tell me your children's middle names backwards from youngest to oldest.
Okay. From youngest is the middle name. Actually, he has two middle names, David, Walter. And then the oldest middle name is Michael.
All right. David, Walter, you are just challenging me on this today. Okay. Yoga pants or jeans?
Yoga pants.
How often do you eat pizza?
Maybe every couple weeks.
Scale of 1 to 10, how good are you at being on time?
8.
Ooh. Sweet or sour?
Sour.
Cookie dough or cookies from scratch?
Cookie dough from scratch.
Jen, how do you feel about llamas?
I love llamas. I have since I was probably like 18. I don't know what my problem is.
I love them too. That makes me love you all the more. And the final question is, what's your favorite name that rhymes with Gwen?
Ken? Like Ken and Barbie?
That's your favorite? Your name's Jen. I gave you one there. I
can't even think of my own name.
Honey, I loved you a softball right there. Over home plate.
Ken is not my favorite name.
Okay, I'm going to ask it again. Favorite name that rhymes with Gwen?
We're going to go with Jen.
Yay!
Oh, boy.
Well, I love to laugh, and so that made me laugh, and that makes everyone love you more. Alrighty, so... I want to thank Covenant Eyes for sponsoring today's Graceologie episode. Ladies, we know we have a hypersexualized world. Marketers are using sex to sell everything from handbags to hamburgers, and the temptation is great. Most Christian men say they struggle with looking at pornography at least once a month. Do something about it by protecting your home with Covenant Eyes. It recognizes when inappropriate images are viewed and lets a trusted friend know about it, which opens up conversations, which leads to freedom. You can try it for 30 days for free. Just go to covenanteyes.com and enter Graceologie at the checkout to receive your first 30 days for free. Again, that's covenanteyes.com. Enter the promo code Graceologie for your first 30 days for free. So while we're getting started with our conversation and getting to know you more, why don't you just tell us a little bit about you and where you're from, all that kind of stuff?
Yeah. So I live in Bryn Mawr, which is right outside of the city of Philadelphia. And we live in like kind of a unique spot because it's just a super tight couple blocks here where I have about 800 neighbors within, like, I can see out my window into their house.
Oh,
and,
my goodness.
You know, I mean, literally you could speak from window to window. So, you know, that could be good or bad, but we have really awesome neighbors. So I know we just have a lot of fun. There's always people walking by. You can smell restaurants. There's a train on the other side of our house. It's kind of crazy and loud, but for us, it works really well and we love it. So I have 2 kids, like I mentioned, Ellington and Brecken, and they are 11 and 13, which is really crazy to me that they're that old, but they're still really sweet and they're funny and they're actually really fun to spend time with, which I don't think all kids are. So I feel really fortunate for that. Yeah.
Are you from Philadelphia area originally?
I am not. I'm actually from Michigan originally. So I grew up in a town called Traverse City, which is right on Lake Michigan, and it's beautiful. And I actually spend a good portion of the summer there still every year. So we go back for about 6 weeks in the summer, and it's like being in heaven. So
I have a girlfriend who lives there. My girlfriend Ann, from college. Hey, shout out to Ann. What's up, Ann? And I know of Traverse City, and I know that people love it.
Yes, everyone loves it. So you kind of like, once you go, you just want to keep going. So
totally cool. So you grew up in Traverse City. Where'd you go to school?
I went to school in Grand Rapids, Michigan at Cornerstone and loved it. I think some people look back at like Christian colleges and think, oh, it was so conservative or it was this or that. But I loved being at Cornerstone. I had the best experience and made amazing friends there, had awesome professors, and just, I don't know, it was like really formative, I guess, to who I am and just the way I look at the world and stuff. So I don't know, I still love going back there and stay connected with a lot of people from Cornerstone, which has been really fun. It was interesting. A lot of people, I think, go away to college and are like, come away with this whole brand new way of seeing things. But for me, it was a little more of like, making it clearer the faith that I had been brought up in, because I didn't grow up in a family where faith was one dimensional, but it gave me more language around it and more clarity around that and what kind of had already been planted in me from my parents. So I ended up going to seminary actually after that for theology. And as I kind of left seminary and did some work in writing, but as I started writing for myself, that was really what my heartbeat was helping other people just broaden their view of what their faith is, to broaden their understanding of what it means if you actually follow Jesus. What does it mean to actually trust in God? Because it means a lot more than just going to church and abstaining from a list of don'ts.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I love that. No, that's a really beautiful kind of summary of the journey that God had you on from a young person through those college years. And I think the theme that rises to my heart when I hear you talk about this is that you wanted to make an impact. You wanted to be useful for the Lord. And I think that when we are, walking with Jesus and really striving to please him and to know him and to grow, I think that we naturally want to be women who make an impact.
I think you're right. I think that there is something inside us that wants to do something meaningful with our lives. And that looks different for everyone. But I think that is something that we kind of all relate with. Even people who aren't Christians, they might not really know what that means or what that is inside them. But I think that that's something that is in each of us.
Yeah.
So,
and we want life to be good. We want life to be full. And that just leads me to that familiar passage in John 10:10, where Jesus has basically saying two main things. That number one, we have an enemy and he has a plan to take us down. He wants to discourage and destroy our lives. And then Jesus making the statement, I, on the other hand, have a different plan. And that is for you to have full life, an abundant life. And the book that you just wrote is called The Bright Life. And I love the subtitle, 40 Invitations to Reclaim Your Energy for the Full Life. So tell us the story behind writing the book.
Yeah, as I have the kids and kind of journeying into becoming an adult, I kind of fell into just some really unhealthy patterns of basically just exhausting myself, running myself ragged. And as a family, we were just going like a million miles an hour. And to kind of fit everything into the day, I would then stay up till 3 a.m. on my laptop trying to finish, things up and get up early before the kids. And we did this for years, and we kind of hit a wall where we were just exhausted and run down. There were health problems that were cropping up, and it was really kind of an eye-opening experience to have to evaluate, like, what are we doing here? Like, how are we living? This isn't healthy. And, the worst part of it is that I had been at that point already for at least a few years spending a lot of time writing about this idea of like holistic faith and, how your faith like does impact all these different parts of your life and, and including your health and including, taking care of yourself. But the problem was it really only manifested in my own life in ways that kept us just like insanely busy. So, if we just happened to have one free night on the calendar that week, I would not think, oh, good, because we're exhausted and we should rest. I would think, oh, we can invite this family over for dinner, or, we can host this event, or, whatever. So always just squeezing more and more out of it. And I think that it goes back to what you were just saying about this abundant life, is that we all have this idea of this like amazing life that we think that we should be living. And, we can get all this stuff done. We can have an impact. We can help people. We can, do good things and also kind of like carve out a spot for ourselves or have picturesque life that we see online. So we really run ourselves into the ground, like chasing this and building it and kind of scraping it together. And the thing is we end up depleted and exhausted, and we're trying so hard to build this life that we kind of just drain the life right out of ourselves. So that's a spot that we found ourselves in. And it really was a wake-up call to kind of turn around and learn to rest and to find, quiet and stillness, and to not be, like always going, always doing, always trying to squeeze every last drop out of every day. And what it came down to was just learning to trust God, because I think that was that was the hard realization, is to realize that like, I won't go to bed at 10:30 or 11 because I think if I don't get a few more things done, everything's going to fall apart.
Whoa. Wait a minute. Now you're stepping on some people's toes. I want you to unpack. Maybe mine. I don't know. Maybe mine. So I want you to unpack that a little bit, Jen, because I think this is huge. And I think that this is something that the young mom with toddlers needs to hear. I think it's something that the single mom with 3 jobs needs to hear. I mean, I think it's something that the senior widow who is trying to serve and love and give. I mean, we all need to hear this. So help me understand a little bit more about what you mean there, that going to bed at 10:30 might mean you have to trust God with your hours. Come on, help me.
Yeah. I mean, that was actually one of the hardest changes for me to make, because I think that we all have this idea that if we work hard and, get everything done, and if we look a certain way and our home is clean and our emails are answered, then life is going to work out, right? Like that's when things will work out the way they should. We'll, solve the problems in the world. We'll solve the problems in our hearts and in our homes. And in that sense, like we really think that we have control. Like we think that if we can just get enough done, that's when we'll be okay. And so the thing is, like, life doesn't work out that way, because there are other humans involved in our lives.
Right.
But also because we don't have the control that we think that we have. And we aren't meant to have that control. And so when we learn to trust God, we can say, okay, like I'm done for the day. Like I'm exhausted. I've done what I can do. And God is going to hold me together, and God's going to still hold the world together, even if I go to bed. And we see that with Jesus, like when he's in the boat and the disciples are all like freaking out about the storm and he's just asleep. And when I read that story, I'm like, well, I am clearly the disciples in that story.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely.
I'm always in a panic. I'm like, oh my gosh, not everything's done. And how could we ever rest? Because, everything will just fall to pieces. Yeah. And especially if you have kids, you feel like they need all of our energy so that they're thriving and they're turning into the best version of themselves. But yeah, like I think sometimes I've had to learn that my greatest act of faith oftentimes is closing my laptop and going to bed. Or sadly, as simple as saying, I'll fold that laundry tomorrow or the next day because I need to rest, or I need to get some sleep, or maybe because I just need to be available for my kids or a neighbor or someone in my life. Those things are so silly, but they're really hard because when everything doesn't look just right and feel just right, and we don't feel like we're on top of everything, we get frantic. We get worried that we're not measuring up. Our life's going to fall apart. Everything's going to go wrong. But when we learn to trust God, that we're going to be okay, our kids are going to be okay, He is restoring this world, and it's not dependent on our constant striving, then it's okay to go to bed. It's okay to let the laundry sit for a couple days. It's okay if you end up serving pizza for dinner. Like everyone's going to be okay. Like God is still in control, whether we do those things or not. And actually, I think, that's when we actually get to see how in control He is and how beautiful that is.
Yeah. Hey guys, do you ever get frustrated when you read the Bible because it seems hard to understand? Let me tell you, you are not alone. And that's why I've created a 5-part online inductive Bible study called the Psalm Adventure to help make Bible study more simple. Listen, I've had tons of conversations and have heard from so many of you asking how you can understand Scripture and know what God has to say about things like forgiveness and finances and healing and fear and anxiety and relationships. You want to know how to connect your personal struggles to the promises of God. That's exactly what we explore in the Psalm Adventure, because we go right to the source of all grace and all truth, the Bible. Join me for a free Psalm Adventure. When you do, you'll get weekly instructions and videos where you and I hang out and where we talk about what we've read that week and seek God's heart together and pray and grow as a Graceologie community. Even if you've never done a Bible study before in your life, I promise you, this Psalm Adventure is doable. Consider this your personal invitation. It is time to gain some clarity in the Word and to experience a renewed hope and strength and peace that is only found in the presence of God. So learn more about the free online studies and register today by visiting gwensmith.net/psalmadventure. That's gwensmith.net/psalmadventure. you think that maybe we have trouble trusting him with those things because we want God to make sense like math does? We want, simple math, let me clarify. But we want 1 + 1 to equal 2. We want, I do my part, God, then you do your part, and everything's going to be happy. And that's how we think the full life should look. And so I think in my experience, the gap between my believing and my trusting is sometimes defined by my expectations of how God should respond. If I do this, then he should do this.
Absolutely. And I am a big math person. So I love math for fun. And
Wow.
I think that's why.
Why didn't I ask that one in the fast food favorites round? Oh,
Right. You're like, that's weird,
you're
but okay.
special.
But the thing is, I like things that are neat and organized and make sense. And I think that is a hard thing for me. And I think probably for a lot of people is that God doesn't necessarily always make sense to us, and the way that he acts and the way that things work in the world, it's not, a straightforward equation. And, just this Sunday, our pastor was preaching on Sabbath, and one of the questions he asked at the end was like, kind of gave us a minute to think about, like, why can't you stop? Like, why can't you stop running and striving and working and going? And my first initial thought was like, well, because I have things to do, and, I've got bills to pay and work to get done and stuff around the house. And then immediately that was like followed up in my heart with like this scarier thought of like, no, like it's because I think that if I'm not working my butt off and I'm not doing my very, very best and hardest work all the time, that I am not worthy of God's help.
Yes.
Like, I feel like I have to do, if I'm not killing it, and, basically what I mean by killing it's killing myself, like running myself ragged, then why should God help me? Why should God be faithful? Why should God provide that project that I need, or, have someone show up when I need them to show up? And that's not how God works. And the thing is that I was thinking about just this morning, actually, when I was reading my Bible, is like, I have this idea that like, oh, well, if I'm not doing all these things, then I don't deserve God's favor. I don't deserve God's blessing. But the thing is, like, I already don't deserve it. Yeah. Like, no, we don't deserve it. He gives it to us without merit. Like, God is blessing me. God has given me everything I have. And I've never deserved it to begin with. So I don't know why I live like I have to earn it still every single day.
I think you're knocking on the door of something that's really going to resonate with every single one of us. And I want you to go a little deeper with that, because I think one of the struggles that we all have is really trying to wrap our heads around God's grace, because I agree, it is so easy for me to feel, well, if I don't read 2 chapters in the Bible a day and write in my prayer journal, he's not going to love me as much. And he's not going to take care of the prayer requests that I didn't say that are listed, or the things that are on my heart. And yet it's so faulty in thinking. So I want you to unpack that a little bit about just the grace angle, because I know in your book, in The Bright Life, you talk about learning those unforced rhythms of grace. And I know that's from the Message, which is just this beautiful paraphrase, this poetic paraphrase of the Bible. But that scripture describes that unforced rhythm of grace. So what does that look like on a practical level? Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that when we learn to trust that God is who he says he is, that he's loving, that he's good, that he's powerful, that, he calls us his children, that he has the world in his hands. Like, if we really believe that, then suddenly there's room for grace for other people. There's also grace for ourselves, because there's room for errors. There's room for misses or for messing up. I think that's what lets us stop trying so hard. And that's what lets us learn that we can try again, because we don't make a mistake and like all hope is lost. And we don't make a mistake and God's like, you're out of here. Like, I had a great plan for your life, but you really had to stay on track for that.
Yeah, exactly. You big fat loser. I mean, come on.
Yes, exactly.
But we do struggle with that though.
Yeah. The thing is, like, I mean, you use the example of like reading your Bible and writing your prayer journal. I think that's such a perfect example, because I think that's the kicker, is we do this in so many areas of life, but we also do it, those simple parts of like the spiritual life, which is supposed to be like this great time, like connect with God. He's always there. But then we put so much pressure on ourselves. And I think if you're in a season of life where you can sit down and do a Beth Moore Bible study and you've got, 45 minutes in the morning to really dig in and it's meaningful and great, like that is so great. And sometimes that's me and I love that.
Yes.
But sometimes you're in a season of life where you're going to open up your YouVersion app and you're going to read the verse of the day and you're going to think about it and like pray and move on because that's literally all you can muster up at that point.
Yes.
And the thing is that God isn't like, yeah, we're on the outs.
That was so JV. I know.
Right, exactly. And the other thing is too, is I think there's a book that I read, I don't know, a few months ago by Jon Acuff called Finish. And he talks about like when you're trying to, you want to run a race, you want to do a project, whatever it is, like you set these goals for yourself and you say, okay, I'm going to run 3 miles a day every day for 30 days. And you run 3 miles a day for like 15 days. And then on the 16th day, you sleep in or you miss something and you don't do it. So most people, like, they just quit. There's still 14 more days or whatever. You're just done. And so I think that we do that with our spiritual life. Like we miss reading our Bible for a couple days or, we don't, whatever your routine is, you miss it, or maybe for, years, but even if sometimes it's just a matter of a day or two. And we're kind of like, well, that was that. Like I did.
Throw your hands in the air.
Yeah.
Please.
That was a good try. And the thing is that the way I try to remind myself of this, and I've talked about it with some of the women's groups I've met with this fall, is that God is going to show up with you on Thursday, whether you were there on Wednesday or not, because he was there and he's still there. And like, whether you, again, are sitting down with some kind of like awesome journal or you're going through a Bible study or you're just reading a chapter, you're reading one verse, like whatever it is you're doing, or maybe you're just sitting in silence and saying like, God, like I'm depleted, speak to me. Like whatever it is you're doing, I think taking that pressure off, when we have less pressure on ourselves, I think that's when there's actually room for things to be so much more meaningful. And there's so much more that can happen. And that's when we really see the grace of God, because he's not waiting to see what we give him before he gives us grace. And he's not waiting to see. I mean, that's what the Bible says. We love him because he first loved us. So that love and that grace is already there. And we need to live like it's there, not always worrying and, wondering if we're measuring up from day to day.
Wow. I think that is powerful. And I know that there are listeners right now who might be commuting to work. They might be folding laundry. They might be washing dishes. If that's you and you know that this is a message that you need to hear and you want these notes, I want you to be encouraged because I'm going to put on the show notes for this episode with Jen. I'm going to put the book that she just mentioned, Jon Acuff, Finish. Jon Acuff is hilarious. You'll love him. And I'm also just going to put show notes and you're going to be able to come back time and time again to remember things like God is going to show up with you on Thursday, whether you met with him no matter what you did on Wednesday. So these are truths that we all need to know. And you can come back to that by going to the show notes at gwensmith.net/Graceologie. Find this episode with Jen Wise and you will have everything you need, all the links, all the information. So Jen, I want you to keep going with that. So how does this all connect to the Bright Life? How does these unforced rhythms of grace that we're talking about, how does this connect with the Bright Life that you're talking about in your book? How do you define the Bright Life?
I think the Bright Life is that meaningful, beautiful life that we all are really trying for. Goes back to that thing. We all have that thing inside of us. It's like, oh, I want this life of meaning and beauty and connected relationships and, and significance. But the irony is like, we are trying so hard to get that. But when we learn to trust God and rest, like we're not, I think what I should say is when we're trying so hard to get that, we're overscheduling ourselves. Right? We're overscheduling our kids if we have kids. We're running ourselves into the ground. We're always worried, like, do I look a certain way? Are my nails done? Is my laundry done? Like, are my emails caught up? And we're just kind of getting this frantic pace. And we're trying so hard to build this life that we miss that the way that we have a significant life, the way that we have connected relationships, the way that we have grace and beauty and meaning in our days is when we stop trying so hard to get it. And I think like when we trust that God's got us, that he's got our future, that he's got the world, we spend so much less time frantically striving that we suddenly have room to be kind to the people around us. We have room to offer grace. We have space to stop and pray with the neighbor who's having a hard day, or just to be kind to the person at the grocery store. We suddenly feel better. We're healthier. We can eat better. We can exercise. Our families are happier. And, our relationships are thriving. I think that's when we have friendships that are meaningful and thriving, when we actually stop signing up for every single activity and every single opportunity and every board, every volunteer position, every job we can get our hands on, like trying to climb the ladder. And I think when we learn to just let go of trying so hard and striving to get this life, the irony is that we find out that's the actual way to have the bright life. Yeah. That's when we find those things that we were really after all along.
I love that. It's like the grace of Jesus, that full life that we've been invited to, is really this invitation to step forward from your stress into this space, into his presence, into his restoring, which is what he's all about. So I know that you mentioned one of your passions regarding faith and is the practical side. It is that connection with eating and exercise. Talk a little bit about that. Can you give us some things that listeners, the Graceologie community, can begin to do today that will start to make a difference and move them forward from that place of stress towards the space and just be practical?
Yeah. I mean, in terms of kind of that whole person idea, I think what I already mentioned, which I always say this when people ask for for like practical tips, and everyone thinks it's so silly, but honestly, like, go to bed earlier. I think that is something that everyone should do and is really hard to do. And I think especially for women, I think most women feel like their work is never done. And that is regardless of whether you have a family or you live on your own, right, or, your kids are grown or young. Every woman I know has a million plates spinning at all times. Yeah. And I think learning to actually go to bed and get rest and to not put yourself last in that regard. And similarly, one of the things I touched on in the book and that I think is really important, and again, especially, well, probably for men too, but I think again with women, just because the way that we are so task oriented in our days and weeks, but is making time in your schedule for life-giving practices. So again, like, it's great to put others first. It's great to be selfless. But when we don't ever let anything pour back into us, like, we're not even able to care for the people around us.
No, that's a good point. So talk to me. Yeah. What are life-giving practices? What do we need to make time for? What are they?
Yeah. I mean, I think they're probably, vary from person to person to some extent. But I think some common ones would be things like, connecting with your friends. So whether that's on the phone or in person or FaceTime, getting coffee with someone. I have a couple of close friends who, because we don't have a ton of extra time, like, we get together to work out. So we might do weightlifting even, or go for a run or go to yoga so that we can be together and talk and also, take care of something else on our list. So I think connecting with friends is really huge. Mm-hmm. Also, like I just said, even like exercise, I think, I know not everyone is super into that, but even if that just means going for like a short walk after dinner or on your lunch hour, I think that just getting your body moving, for most people, it does recharge you in a way that other things don't. Yeah. So even if it's something literally as simple as just going for a short walk and getting outside, I think that it just can make such a huge difference. I hesitate to say some of the cheesier things that people consider self-care, like getting a massage or getting your nails done.
Exfoliate your face, but it's not a bad idea. Hydrate. I mean, it's true. Honestly, it is true. I mean, I think it's kind of like we know what to do. I mean, it's not like, this is not brain surgery. This is not high level math. I know that I'm going to have less of the flabby skin underneath my triceps if I do push-ups. But do I do them? It's like, come on. It's like, do them, do your plank, do your push-ups. But it's like, take baby steps. I've mentioned this before on the show, but one of the things that I do that is just a little thing in self-care is I am a Keurig girl. So I have coffee once or twice a day, and it takes approximately a minute and 30 seconds for that cup of coffee to brew. So while that minute and 30 seconds is taking place, as soon as I push the button, I get down a lot of times, most of the time, not all the time. Grace lives, but I get down and plank, and I literally plank for a minute and a half. And it's like, okay, if I do nothing else today, I planked for a minute and a half while my coffee was brewing. And sometimes that's enough, and sometimes that's all I got. But but it's something. And so it's kind of of like wherever you are, do something and prioritize it. And that's going to move you forward, and reduce stress and at least help, in terms of the holistic thing. Cause I do think that does help amplify our lives, like you said. And so what's the difference between self-care being important versus selfish? Like, well, because some women like don't want to do anything for themselves because that's wasted time. So talk about that for a second.
Yeah. I mean, I think that it's easy to feel that way. And sometimes I still sometimes think that I'm like, oh, should I be doing this or that when there's all these other things around the house to do? I've got work to do, or the kids need like new socks. I could go to Target, like whatever, like all these stupid things that, kind of run through your brain. But the thing is that when we're completely run down and empty, like we are not our best selves. And I I know that for myself, even just when I have not eaten well through the day, I know I'm not my best self.
Oh, yeah.
Or if I'm more quick to, be frustrated, or, I'm too exhausted to be patient. And I just think that, when we take the time to take care of ourselves, that's when we have the energy and, the nutrition and all these things pumping that help us to actually live the way that we want to live and to interact and relate the way that we want to interact and relate with people.
Right. And obviously nothing's going to overrule our submission to the Spirit of God and his leading. And those questions are going to be first and foremost on his journey to the bright life. Like, Lord, what do I need to eliminate? I mean, it's going to be that, in terms of, we can talk about grace all day long, but we also need to talk about surrender to God's plan, his best, and to really to reflect, to do what the psalmist did. And I love the end of Psalm 139 when he said, search me and know me, show me any way in my heart and my life that is offensive to you, Lord. It's like, it's almost like saying fix me, but it's redirect me. And that, is going to be the ultimate way that we experience the bright life. But then there are these other things, and they are significant. We can't just poo-poo them and think, well, that's not spiritual. Well, yes, it is, because we're physical beings, and there are physical choices that we have to make that make an impact on our wellness, on the soul rest, on that. And I know that, rest seems to be a real key to the message that you have with the bright life. Would you take a minute and talk to the Graceologie community about some practical things that she can do today, and really what it could look like for her to examine opportunities and commitments in her calendar?
Yeah. One of the things that I did a few years ago, because I had a morning where I got up, I had been out late at this group I was a part of, got home, woke up in the morning and got up before my kids to try to get some things done, opened up my laptop, and I just had this influx of emails because I'd been out the night before at this, with this group. And then there was a social thing after the group, and I had not responded to any emails or even opened them. So I sat down, opened my computer, and I thought, okay, I just need to at least get through these emails before I start actually working.
Mm-hmm.
So I start looking through these emails, and it was just ask after ask after invite after ask. And it was 90% great things. It's like, come to this, art opening, be a part of this group, volunteer in this position. Can you attend this event? Most of them were things that I thought I could do that, and that's fun, or I would enjoy being a part of that, or I could help with this. But I'm reading through these things and I'm already so exhausted. I had been out late. I was up early. I had so much to do. And that was before I would get my kids out the door for school. And I just thought, I felt kind of like crumbling. I just thought, I can't keep up with all this stuff. I just can't do it all, which we know, but yet we try. So we keep trying. And so I kind of, I had to just pause on these emails and not look at them. And what I did that day actually was I took some time and I thought through, what are the highest priorities for my time right now in this season? Yes. Because that might change sometimes. But right now, if I have a million asks every week of my time, and most of us do, what exactly what gets my time right now? And so I thought through, what are my highest values right now? And for me, in this space, it came down to my work, which I would narrow down to saying writing and speaking, because there's a million other things I can do and sometimes do, but I shouldn't be doing. The second was pouring into my kids so that they know, deep in their bones that they're loved. And the third thing was hyper local ministry and outreach stuff. So connecting with my neighbors, not because I think I have to minister to them in a weird way, because I love them. Things right in my community, like local events that I help plan or I'm a part of. Yeah, just like hyper local stuff right here in Bryn Mawr and like right around our house. So with those three things in mind, I went back to those emails and I was just like, no, can't do this, won't be there, and decline. Like, because even though a lot of them were really good things and some of them really fun things, like you can't do it all, because something's going to give. Your health's going to give, your family's going to give, you're going to be crabby, you're going to be rude, things are going to fall through the cracks, and you're not going to live the life that you want to live when you're trying to do it all.
Yes.
So my suggestion is to take the time, and maybe that's something where you have to ask your friends or your spouse or your parents, like for input, like what are the biggest things right now for me? And maybe it's just one or two things, or maybe it's three. And to clarify, when I say like pouring into my kids, that doesn't mean that I'm going to be at every school. Well, I go to a lot of school functions. Like, I'm not going to be, I'll go watch them play sports and things like that. But like, I'm not going to be the parent who volunteers to send food in every time, which kills me because I would love to be that parent.
You don't work in the lunchroom, Jen? What?
I know.
Me neither.
I know. But it is, it's like those.
But for
those
some people,
like,
they are able to, and that's their passion. And we say, praise God for that. For me, I never was convicted that way. I actually, similarly, years ago with a full house, and when my children were all still in our home, because of the calling of ministry, because I am a working mom, and unapologetically so, I love the work that God has me doing, but it is complicated. I mean, come on. All of us who are working moms or just working women, we know it's complicated to manage and balance all of this. I chose years ago to have a personal no party policy. It is a no party policy. And that just means you invite me to your caddy show, your Pampered Chef party, your American. It's nothing personal. I just have a no party policy. That doesn't mean I won't support your business, and please don't send me hate mail. It is a boundary I established so that I didn't have to even think about it when I got the bunco invitation or this, that, or the other thing. It is in order to circle the wagons on my top priorities. I don't have to explain it. And I, so maybe you're feeling overwhelmed and you just need permission to say no. Here it is. You can have your own personal no party policy. This is, if nothing else, take this away. It protects you. And so for me, I didn't, when I get those invitations, and I have some right now in my email, and if you're my friend and you've sent me one, I love you. I'm just not coming to your party. It's okay. Because I don't have those extra minutes. I don't. But but if I need oil-free eye makeup remover, I'm calling my Mary Kay girl because I love the product. I'm just not coming to the party. It's okay. But it has saved me. It has saved me. And here's what I would say, because I'm all about practical here, is if that's you and you want to implement the personal no party policy, which I'm making that official now, then you don't have to explain it to people. You can just say, thank you so much for the invitation. I am not able to come, but I hope you have an amazing time. And I need a cheese grater, whatever, don't be afraid to support your people. But yeah, I mean, so for me, that's freeing. And that was grace. That was grace for my family. That was grace against my own judgment, because I'm an ENFP on the Myers-Briggs. I want a party. Like, show me the party. Yeah. Is there dip involved? Because if there's dip and chips, I'm almost will drop everything, even my family, to get there. But I have had to make that choice. I know I'm a party girl. I want to be with the people, but I had to establish that in order to have that rest and to have that space. And I still struggle. So, hear me on that. So I'm with you, Jen. I think that's terrific. So I love that your book has some components where at the end of every chapter, you encourage readers to really practice what they're reading. It's like, okay, let's go street level with this. You can read about it all day, but how is this going to play out in your life?
Right.
So is that why you did that? talk about, the reflection?
Yeah. So yeah, at the end of each day, there are 3 questions or three things to consider. And the first is looking inward. I feel like you have to kind of start by understanding yourself a little bit. Like where, how does this affect me? Where do I struggle in this area? Where do I have freedom? Where do I have energy? It moves into looking upward towards God. So responding to God with what you found, because, that like he's the one who's going to give us direction. And also a lot of times, like we realize like we have things to praise him for. We have things that we need to, be grateful for, thankful for, or maybe there's something we need to commit to him or lay down to him or ask for forgiveness, which is often the case for myself.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Right. But then, the third part is like, okay, great. You've done that. But now what are you going to do with that? Because again, like if you aren't practically applying any of these things to your life, it's all just great thoughts. It's just another thing to do for 40 days or another thing to check off your list or another item on your calendar. But the idea of trusting God and, stepping into this freedom of not having to do it all and be it all, like that really has the potential to just really change the whole look and feel and shape of your life. If you let it. So I think each day there's an invitation to practically apply, and it's nothing crazy. It's not like, oh, now today do this thing that's going to take you 3 hours. It might actually be today, like don't do something that you were going to do.
Or plank while your coffee's brewing.
Yes, which I love, by the way.
I love it. Well, Jen, I know that this is resonating with hearts of listeners like off the chain, because this is a really big situation for all of us. It's a struggle for all of us to establish that margin and to step in to the space with Jesus, for community, for a relationship with him, to be known by him, to be exposed by him, to be led by him. And that is what the full life is all about. It's about his grace. It's about his guidance. So I'm grateful for your writing of this book. And I would love if you would take us one step further, right to his presence. Would you spend a moment in prayer over our Graceologie community, over each listener, because her struggles are real. And she might be listening to this going, I don't have an extra minute. I don't know what to do with this. So would you just pray for our listeners and just wrap up our time together by bringing every single one of us to his feet?
Yes, definitely. God, I just thank you so much for the community of women who listen to this podcast and who are just seeking after you, God. And I pray that you would help each and every one of us to learn to lean into that love and goodness that you have and that you offer to us every single day, God. We pray that you would help us to know that we can't earn it because we already have it. We've never deserved it to begin with, God, but that you just keep giving and keep pouring into us every day. I pray that as we learn to rest in that we would be free of some of the expectations that we place on ourselves, God, that we wouldn't feel like we have to prove ourselves in how we look, what we can accomplish, what our title is, how many degrees we have, how much money we have, what our house looks like, God, that we would learn that we are secure and we are whole and we are valued right now as we are, whether we have a pile of laundry at the end of our bed or 100 emails we haven't read, or, if we have been crushing it all day and we're on top of every detail, God, that it doesn't matter either way. We already have that love and acceptance and value from you, God. I just pray that we would learn to rest in being able to say no, and rest in being able to take time to be replenished, take time to be refilled, to take care of our bodies and our souls, and just to meet with you where we're at every day, God, in the big ways and in the small ways. I just pray that you would help us see that you have already lifted this burden off of our shoulders, and we don't need to walk around with the weight of cultural expectations, God, but that you have taken that away and that we have freedom there to live a bright life and to live a life that offers energy and rest and goodness and connected relationships and meaning, God. I just pray that you would meet each of us today, this week, and just show us how to take a step back and to find your rest. Amen.
Amen. Awesome. The book is called The Bright Life. I've been speaking with Jen Wise, and I think she has brought us some great wisdom in this conversation. Jen, can you, yay, see how I did? See what I did there? Jen, tell my listeners, our Graceologie community, where they can connect with you online.
Yeah, you can find me at genwise.co. It's .co. So genwise.co. And from there, you can find everything else. I love connecting with people online. It makes, when you write a lot, you just really want human interaction.
Totally.
Find me.
Totally. And you will find Jen's website and her book, a link to buy her book, all of the show notes from today you can find at gwensmith.net/Graceologie. Find the episode with Jen Wise. Jen, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. This was super, super fun. I've loved it.
Good stuff, right? Be sure to visit Jen Wise online and definitely connect with her on social media. Today's show was edited by Chad Shuping, and the music is by premiumbeat.com. If you have any questions, comments, or topic suggestion, just visit my website and send me an email. It's gwensmith.net. All of the links and show notes from today's episode can be found at gwensmith.net/Graceologie. That's gwensmith.net/Graceologie. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, if you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe to the Graceologie with Gwen Smith podcast. Subscriptions and reviews on iTunes make a huge impact for those of us who are working hard to bring you these shows. And also find me on social media. I'm at Gwen Smith Music on every platform. Now get out there and have a beautiful, grace-filled day. Thanks again to FabFitFun for sponsoring today's episode. Hey, be sure to run over to fabfitfun.com and use coupon code GRACEOLOGY for 40% off your first box.